Hello, Prague. My name is Chris. I'm an architect from Austria, and I operate a small studio together with my wife, Faye, in the mountains of Salzburg. Today, I would like to start my talk with my father. As you see, my dad, he was a pretty crazy climber. He climbed everything without ropes, without any security, free solo, just him and the mountains. I think that my dad had a very direct connection to our natural environment. And if you ask my father why he did something like this, he would answer, well, because he feels connected. He feels connected to his own senses. He feels connected to his own feelings, to his own emotions. But he also feels connected to all this history since this mountain exists. And he feels connected to nature and to the environment. And I think there are a lot of lessons for architects to learn from that. My dad died 4 years ago. He fell in the mountains. And I remember there was a journalist, and he was writing an obituary about my father. And he wrote that my father managed something that is very rare. That my dad, he managed to build his own universe, his own reality far off from the real reality, here, down here. And the more I think about this, the more I disagree with that, because I think that my father, he was connected to an objective reality as close as is somehow possible. I think he was connected to his own senses. He was connected to all of this history. But our reality down here, in valleys and in cities, is actually driven by different reality, by this universe we created. Yuval Noah Harari calls that we are driven by fictional stories. Stories that we invented and stories that just exist because we all agree that they exist. Stories like money, religions, nations, borders, the economic system. So the same is true to architecture. Architecture was always driven by fictional stories. We built the pyramids for gods, we built castles for kings, we built palaces for queens, and now we are building mostly to make a profit in a kind of an economic system. So we all care about those stories, but our planet doesn't. And I think if we are not able to connect ourselves to this really objective reality, then I don't see any chance that we are able to solve the problems of our time. So we try in our project to take all of this into consideration. For example, this modular building based on a bamboo system. I was introduced to bamboo early on in China through my wife. Her grandfather was a bamboo craftsman. And we built some little structure for 3 years out of bamboo to just get to know the material better. For example, in this structure, all of the connections and all of the joints are tied with ropes. That leaves the material itself unharmed, and after building lifespan, all of the materials can be reused again. We now build the first structures into forests and into the jungle. This is, for example, a hotel we just finished in Ecuador, and really that connects people then back into this reality, into an objective reality of nature and of the environment. This project has a similar goal. It's based, again, on a very modular system of building components. And those building components can be combined together in very different configurations. So like you and me, we are all different, but in our core, we are all the same. So this is also true to this building. So they can be stuck together in different configurations. They are different, but in its core, they are all the same. So I see this project more as a kind of a quirky character than really a building. And I know that, you know, as architects, this is this serious craft, this serious industry where we try to find some references in the art world and in philosophy and in music and so on. So we also try to find one in the artwork that fits actually the best. But there is some truth to that, because I think that as architects, we sometimes take ourselves and our industry too serious. I think that sometimes we have to look to our environment more through the eyes of children. I think there is a lot of, if we do that, I think there are a lot of spaces we create that are more discoverable and more explorable for people. And I think to discover, to explore is something so fundamental that is somehow stuck in our DNA, like my dad did for 67 years. So I think if we somehow bring this curiosity back into architecture and connect people that way back to nature, I think architecture becomes much more interesting, inspirational, and much more diverse. The question for us is, how do we bring this sense of nature and this sense of curiosity back to our cities? So we tried this, for example, in this project in Toronto, with natural materials. And even the material that is used for the building can grow on its facade. For this project in Tel Aviv, we tried it by connecting to the environment and to the surrounding of Tel Aviv. Tel Aviv was built by, on one hand, the Mediterranean style, on the other hand, by the Bauhaus. So both projects are combined within this building, and this connects then to the larger neighborhood. This project in Beijing reuses old bricks from demolished Hutong areas to actually build this facade of the hotel. So somehow this history of a place lives on and gets a second life in this building. So as Solin said in the introduction, we started our office in Beijing around 5 years ago. And 2 years ago, we moved then back to Austria. We moved the office back to Austria. And we didn't move to any city. We didn't move to any village. We really moved to the mountains, far off the grid. And I think this was a very difficult decision actually to make for us, because our office in Beijing was going very well. So we give this up. So this was a difficult decision, but it was a very important one, because I think architects in the audience can relate to that we don't have the most healthy job there is. We are working at long hours and we are constantly undervalued. I think actually that architects are not wearing black out of a minimalistic fashion statement. I think we are wearing black because of an emotional statement. I think that we are very sad inside, and that wearing black is somehow a kind of a cry for help. So for us, it was very important to actually create this balance in our life, to create somehow of a, we can go to the mountains when we want, and we can go skiing, we can go hiking, and enjoy our natural environment. And when the weather is not good, we have some time to work on our projects. And of course, these projects are also inspired by the way we are living. We grow our own food. We try to live as self-sufficient and independent as somehow possible. And we try to also put this into the projects we work on and try to transport that back to the city. So this project I introduced now is combining agriculture with architecture. Both industries are very insufficient. Both industries are the biggest polluting industries of our globe. It is very unsustainable how we grow our food, but also what we eat. Now we have a hike on obesity and diabetes and so on. And architecture the same in the building industry. It's very unecological how we build, but also what we build. It doesn't matter if this is Toronto, London, or Shanghai. All of our city became very uniform. We just build anymore in the international style. But if you look at that, if everything looks the same, like who is really inspired by architecture? Who actually, and if people are not inspired by architecture, they don't care for architecture. And if they don't care for architecture, they won't maintain our buildings. So I think we try to find a way to somehow combine in this project, on one hand agriculture and on one hand architecture, to somehow combine them and maybe both can profit from each other. So within the A-frame system, you actually have a space to live, and outside of the A-frame system, you have a space for gardening. If you transport that to the city, it becomes more interesting. And I think cities need to be part of the food production of the future, because in the next 30 years, more food will be consumed than in the last 10,000 years combined. And 80% will be consumed in cities. So that means if we want to grow our food closer to its consumption, cities need to be part of that. And it actually makes sense to grow food on our buildings, because we can think the building of the future differently. We can think of it as an ecosystem by itself, of organic loops within a building. So food waste can be, for example, transported to the basement. There it gets composed, and this nutritious soil then can be reused in order to grow vegetables. Also, this kind of production of food gets back into our city centers, and it gets back to our minds. We reconnect with our food, and it's no mystery anymore how this food lands on our table. We also create spaces that really connect to all of our senses. We create spaces that we want to touch because we use haptic materials. We can listen to because birds and bees are nesting into our buildings. And we can smell, taste, and eat parts of our buildings. So really buildings that connect to all of our senses. And it creates different city centers. City centers that are not defined by banks or corporations, but rather by health and vitality. So I think that our generation of architects is not driven anymore by styles, forms, or intellectual theories. I think that our generation has much bigger problems than that. Climate change, global warming, pollution, urbanization, or AI. These are all tasks now of an architect. And I think these are very big challenges, but I'm very hopeful, because I think that we are a generation of strategic dreamers. We are a generation that asks what is possible and not necessarily what is profitable. And I think so I have a big hope that we are a generation of architects that actually build not for fictional stories, but for an objective reality. Thank you.